The Raiders roll into Tampa fresh off the mini-bye. What does their gritty outing against the champs say about this team? Hall of Famer Howie gives his thoughts. And where does the franchise go from here? Tashan Reed of The Athletic talks big picture. Plus, he defines the next man up mantra. Raiders defensive end K'Lavon Chaisson sits down with us. The Silver and Black Show starts now. Welcome into the Silver and Black Show. I'm Theoharis. The Raiders head to Tampa knowing they've been eliminated from the playoffs. In reality, they've known it was a long shot for a while now, but this team refuses to quit. The last 3 weeks, the Raiders have taken one-score games into the fourth quarter. They outplayed the conference-leading Chiefs on Black Friday, if you look at the box score. Aidan O'Connell had a better stat line than Patrick Mahomes. And yes, while I know all that matters is that they lost, it is worth noting the Raiders put up one heck of a fight with 21 first or second year players on the field that day. 21. That means something for the future. And to talk about this week's matchup and beyond, we welcome in Hall of Famer Howie Long. Welcome in. Good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I would love to see the Raiders stop this skid. I think everybody would like to see that as well. But overall, everybody watched the Black Friday game against the Chiefs. And what did a gutsy showing like that tell you about this team? As I just said, 21 first or second year players played on that field for the Raiders that day.
Well, I think that's, that gives you a good idea of the future direction of the team. But, as we've always talked about, and I think, it's no secret that getting the quarterback right is a huge component. Preferably, there are a lot of different styles of quarterback play in the league. I think Patrick Mahomes is the guy, and certainly this draft class from this season has been very productive. Williams, Jaden Daniels, and, Drake May, I think the style of quarterback is probably going, you don't have one particular guy you're looking for, but you're looking for a guy certainly that has some mobility, big arm, has had a number of starts. The situation is not too big for him. It's the hardest thing to scout or analyze, how it's going to translate, whether it's, high school football, college football to pro football. There are so many misses at that position. This class this year, I think, has really provided some great talent, and I think they're going to have great careers, a majority of them. We haven't even seen the kid in Atlanta. Certainly getting that right for the Raiders. And, when you look at the young roster and all the young players that are contributing and having to step in and play, and the way they play, I think is key. And you always look at it when a team is either on the fringe of being out or, as it is right now, officially out, particularly in a game versus Kansas City and other games where, the effort, you look at the urgency with which the team plays. That a lot of that is, one, it's their character. And, certainly you look into that when you make a draft pick, whether it's a cornerback, a defensive lineman, an offensive lineman, running back, whatever. It's guys that take pride in what they do. And, failure is something, you're in the constant quest for perfect, and it's the holy grail, and it's unattainable. It's the chase and the climb up the mountain that I think defines players, and that goes to the players, kind of mental makeup and competitive nature and their abilities. And I think it's the guy in the front of the room. The guy in the front of the room on Monday sets the course for the week, and the guy in front of the room on Sunday, prior to walking out on that field and trying to get a win, and doing it the right way, win, lose, or draw. You control very few things. You control the ability to play with passion and want to win and take pride in what you do for 4 quarters and beyond.
So when you say that, the guy in the front of the room, do you credit Antonio Pierce with keeping this team together and still battling? As I said, the last couple of games have been one-score games in the fourth quarter.
No question. You could look around the league at other places and, that kind of commitment to, playing at a high level and wanting to perform well. And, even when it's, maybe watched by 2, 3% of the country, 4% of the country, you're doing it and you have pride in yourself and pride in putting on the uniform and being a part of an organization. And, it hasn't been a tough road to hoe. And I know Charles Woodson has stated, he's frustrated, and I'm frustrated. Mark Davis is frustrated. And I think, a lot of players that played there are frustrated. But, I think if you can get this, and they tried like the Dickens to, get that quarterback this season in the preseason, before the draft and make some kind of a move. And, the Jim Plunkett's of the world aren't walking through the door, here's the guy, Jim Plunkett, he goes to New England. He's drafted #1. He gets the crap beat out of him for a couple of 3 years. They move on from him. He goes to San Francisco. He gets beat up there, is not properly coached, and ends up with the Raiders. And, the rest is history. 2 Super Bowls and Super Bowl MVP and what should be a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, kind of like a Rich Gannon, too. Similar story. Ends up with the Raiders and finds his groove.
That's right. And, Rich, you have to kind of really have to appreciate a guy like Rich. Rich is the last quarterback to lead this team to a Super Bowl. And the grit, the competitive fire that he played with, his ability to, physically perform at a high level at that position. He wins an MVP, league MVP. And I think, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy like that. No 2 quarterbacks are the same, and in the draft, whether it's, Deion's boy up in Colorado or, the kid in Miami, or, you can fill in the blank of a number of prospects around the country. They really need to have that position more than any other position. It's the reason why it's paid more than any other position. Is the most demanding position in football, not physically necessarily, but mentally, from a leadership standpoint. There are going to be, ebbs and flows of the season and your career, and you're going to have the mental toughness to persevere through all of that. And you're the guy that has to be the face of the team and lead the room. And that's a challenge on top of everything else you have to do. I have to bring everybody else along. It's like the head coach and the quarterback are kind of, and a guy like Max, those are the cornerstones of your football team.
Yeah, let's talk about guys like Max, like yourself, the guys that try to knock off the heads of the quarterbacks. What have you seen from some of these men that have been asked to step up? Some of the young guys, with Malcolm Kuntz out and Christian Wilkins out for the season. We've seen that the Adam Butlers and Chaisson and just names that we didn't see a lot before hold the Chiefs to 19 points.
And it was impressive, and a lot of pressures came from those guys, and I think that's probably Kansas City's Achilles heel is the protection, particularly at left tackle, and you could probably include right tackle in that also. Their interior 3 is great, but the guys you talked about stepping up, and I firmly believe this. When you have a guy like Max. When you're a young player, when I was a young player, it was Cedric Carbon, it was Lyle Alzado, it was Ted Hendricks, who was the smartest guy in the room, and watching how they practiced, how they prepared, how they played, how important it was to them. And, I'm a believer that in each room, each position room, whether it's defensive line, linebacker, secondary, wide receivers, offensive line, you go right down the slate. There's a guy in the room that sets the tempo for that room. And then there are guys that out of that position room on offense or on defense that set the tone for the entire team. And Max is a guy that does that. And I can't tell you the kind of burden it is to not only be great and be at the top of the mountain at your position. There's 4 or 5 guys that you can name off the top of your head that are in that category at defensive end. And for Max to play the way that he plays, and here's the key, it's the guy in Cleveland also has the same set of circumstances to a great extent. You're playing without a lead, and you're doing it on more snaps than or most snaps in a game, and that's difficult to do when you play in a Kansas City or fill in the blank Buffalo that's putting up 30 points, 25 points, 27 points every week. It's a little bit easier to play defensive line, but for Max, when those players walk in that room on Monday morning, what jumps out at you on film? It's Max. He's getting double, triple. They're finding new creative ways to, not necessarily stop him, but, force him to kind of think, and once you're thinking and you stop and you're kind of gathering your thoughts in a millisecond. Is it the tight end coming? Is it a wham guy coming from the outside? Is it a slide? Is it a chip with the running back? There's a million combinations that he has to deal with on every play. But he plays at 110%. And if you're on that film with him and you're not playing at 110%, and also from a technique standpoint, young guys start to kind of mirror what you do. And the group starts to look like the same. So in other words, you see characteristics and styles that kind of mimic the play of Max. And the same could be said, at the receiver position with your young tight end. He's been special everywhere he's been. And it's kind of like, believe what you see. And when you looked at him at Georgia and the things you heard out of Georgia, and then they made the pick, because you exhaust all your resources trying to get a quarterback and you can't get him. Then it comes to the realization, okay, we've got to get the best possible player. And the best possible player on the draft board was him.
No doubt about it. And he's making history. What about Brock Bowers as a defender makes him such a mismatch?
He's a willing blocker. He's not a great blocker. He's, from a size standpoint, he's not that. I played with a guy named Todd Christensen, who, set all kinds of records for, tight ends and played exceptionally well and was a great receiver. Not a great blocker, a great receiver, great route runner, smart, understood all that. He's that with more athleticism, more speed, more ability, which is scary because, you see the routes that he runs and where they're playing him, and it's kind of like a chess piece. Where do we put him? He's a kind of a hybrid. He's not full size tight end, 250, 245, whatever. I'm not sure exactly what he weighs. He's not a wide receiver, but he's in between, and that's a matchup problem. And when you see a team like Denver put their number one corner on him,
it's a compliment.
When you're putting your number one corner on the tight end,
yeah.
What does that tell you?
Yeah, it tells you that that is who defensive coordinators are circling, that's for sure. And we know that Tampa it could struggle against Brock Bowers. They've given up a lot of receiving yards to tight ends. Let's talk about Tampa's offense, though. They've got Baker Mayfield. He's found new life in Tampa. What makes him so hard to defend? How do the Raiders attack him and try to contain him?
Baker is such an interesting I kind of liked Baker coming out, but I didn't see him as a number one pick. John Dorsey did he went from Kansas City. He was in Kansas City for a long time and was responsible for building some of those teams there and also mentoring a number of guys. The guy that's in Chicago now who drafted Caleb Williams was there under Dorsey. And he's a guy who maybe doesn't have all the kind of specific measurables. Doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the best athlete. He's not 6'5", 225, 230. He doesn't look like the kid from the Chargers. He's not Matthew Stafford. And there were times during his career where, you just kind of, you rooted for him and then you kind of like, you're tired of it. And, the antics and, I think the job that he's done when he went to the Rams, I think was a pivotal moment for him, to get the opportunity to work under a guy like McVay and see how that offense runs and how that quarterback, that position is taught and how they work through it. And I think for him to go to Tampa Bay and take that position and thrive with, some really, I think, good weapons around him. And early in the year, both his 1 and 2 receivers went down. And, you talked about Bucky Irving. And, Tampa Bay, some teams just are good at picking certain things. The Steelers always pick good wide receivers. Some teams pick great defensive linemen. Some teams are really good at the offensive line. Down there, they always seem to find the running back. And, they've got 2 or 3 of them, really. And, Bucky certainly is the guy that has been the focal point here recently. And he had a great game last week. And he's a guy that you've got to stop. And you did mention, I think they have problems covering tight ends. And guess what? We got one that's a problem and a major problem. And in his rookie year, he's, who's better than him at this point, realistically?
No tight ends and very few receivers. I mean, when it comes to yards after catch, he's second to Jamar Chase only. So he's number 2 compared to other receivers. So what he's doing is special. There's no doubt that Aiden O'Connell is going to be looking toward him. Scott Turner, this is going to be his 4th game as the offensive coordinator of the Raiders. How would you attack Tampa's defense if you are Scott Turner?
Well, it depends on, how they want to go about it. But you've got to find creative ways to get your tight end, in matchups that are favorable. It's movements, it's alignments, it's finding creative ways. And, listen, if your name's Turner, you're creative. That comes with the territory. And I think they'll probably find a way. But I think, you're down to your 3rd running back.
Yeah.
And I think he's been a kind of a positive. And I'm a big fan of running the ball, even if it's not working. And which one helps your offensive line. It helps protection. It helps set the receivers up for success. And it forces teams to maybe roll up a little bit in coverage. And you get one-on-ones and you try to figure out where can we get our tight end the best possible matchup and how they defend him. I'm not sure how they'll defend him. Denver, when I was watching the Denver game, I just said, my gosh, he's maybe the best cornerback in football. And you're putting him on our tight end.
And the secondary's banged up for Tampa. And like you said, if Sincere McCormick can get it going on the ground, you got to drop that safety in the box, and that gives less options to cover Brock Bowers. So that could be the key to this. I got one last question. The Raiders' defense, they really struggled early this year. And then over the last 3 games, they have quietly been a top 3 team as far as defending the run, only giving up about 70 yards a game in the last 3 games. When you see a kind of a seismic shift like that, a team that really struggles against the run, then all of a sudden they're doing better, what are they doing right?
Games have been closer, to a certain extent. Playing the run to me is is nothing more than a mindset, because we're in a day and age of, 3-4 wide receivers, sub packages, linebackers go off the field, dime corners come in, nickel, and you've got, five DBs on the field. It's spread, and the mindset of, particularly in the defensive front, is I want to rush the quarterback. And I think playing the run is a mindset as much as anything else. It's wanting to do it and taking pride in it and getting to second and long to third and long. And that's the key. If you keep Tampa Bay in manageable second downs and third downs, Baker is such a gritty, last week he gets hurt. I'm not sure what the problem was or what the issue was, but he comes back in and he has that big scramble and evades 2 rushers and runs up the left sideline and gets them in better field goal position, and they win the football game. He's a guy that, for whatever he lacks in physical ability, he makes up for in want to and competitive grit. He's a gritty player, and he's a guy you've got to get pressure on, and you've got to get him in second and longs. That's not where they want to be. Third and longs, and they've got gifted receivers now. They've gotten some people back, and they're talented.
And Raiders fans, remember that you can't sleep on him. You mentioned his resurrection with the Rams. That was against the Raiders in that game where he went 99 yards down the field. So they've seen him up close. They know what he can do. And let's hope the Raiders defense continues to kind of be underestimated. They've been playing very well lately, giving up just 19 points to the Chiefs, as we said. Howie, a Merry Christmas to you. I love the tree in your background. I know you said off camera that you picked Kyle in your Secret Santa. So, get him something really nice.
Well, I didn't pick him. I got signed.
Oh, you got assigned to him. You wouldn't have picked him, but get him something nice. I'm sure he's picky, but maybe a lump of coal or something. I don't know if he was good as a kid, but make up for old times. Thanks a lot, Howie. We appreciate your time. You're busy.
You have a great Christmas. You do a great job out there. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Coming up next, what can we learn about the future of the Raiders over the final 5 games of the season? Tashan Reed of The Athletic is up next on the Silver and Black Show.
Some days are long, some nights never end. I mark the fleeting seconds glide, I pray to the coming wind. And timelines never stood around for me. I love every sky I've ever seen.
Taste is not an option. Taste is everything. 1800, the world's most awarded tequila.
In 300 feet, turn left.
With Cox's fiber-powered internet, you can do brilliant things.
Exit approaching.
Like upload your voice to Dad's GPS in no time flat.
And I miss you, Daddy. Happy birthday.
Get multi-gig download speeds powered by fiber. Upgrade your internet today with Cox, the nation's fastest internet provider. Limited availability in select areas.
Raiders.com is your home for all things silver and black, featuring exclusive interviews with players and coaches, breaking news, and daily content. Raiders.com keeps you up to date all season long. The Silver and Black Show is brought to you by Cox, proud partner of the Las Vegas Raiders. 1800 Tequila, official partner of the Raiders. Taste is everything. Please drink responsibly. And by Allegiant, the official airline of the Raiders. Low fares, non-stop flights, only at Allegiant.com. While the Raiders look to snap an 8-game losing streak in Tampa this week, the Raiders front office will have a lot to evaluate over the next 5 weeks. To offer perspective, we welcome in senior writer from The Athletic, Tashan Reed. And Tashan, welcome into the Silver and Black Show. It's good to have you on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a little minute.
Well, I know Lisa and your bosses over there will be glad to see you repping The Athletic, so you got the hat on and everything. Look, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Howie Long. Give me your take on the state of the Raiders right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tough season. Obviously, they came into this year having playoff aspirations, coming off of last year, finishing strong under interim coach then Antonio Pierce, and after he got the full-time job this offseason, making some moves in the offseason. They thought they had the chance to make a run this year. That hasn't materialized for numerous reasons. They got hit pretty rough by the injury bug. The quarterback, they had multiple quarterback changes. They've let some close games get away. But it kind of is what it is at this point. And now, given where they stand at 2-10, you're starting to look more towards the offseason, and kind of how they can improve upon this moving forward and avoid ending up in a similar place. I think something that, they found some solace in is that the team has continued to compete week in and week out. I know they're in the midst of a long losing streak right now, but competing on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs on Black Friday last week, almost pulling that game out. You clearly see it's not a matter of effort, but there are changes that do need to be made looking ahead to this offseason to, try to put a better product out on the field next year. But, there's still 5 games left to play. It's the NFL. It's not really a sport where you can just mail it in. You got to go out there and give it your full effort. And I think these guys are trying out there, and that's something that, the organization is trying to hang their hat on right now.
And Tashan, we've covered this game a long time, and both of us know it is hard with a young team. It takes a lot of leadership to continue to compete during a losing streak like this. And this team is scrapping, like you said, under Antonio Pierce. What are you hearing in the locker room? You talk to the players about his ability to continue to motivate the players.
Yeah, there's no more victories, right? And so guys are really, down in the dumps after these losses, particularly last week. I think just the nature of that final play. I mean, Jackson Powers-Johnson in particular took it very hard and talked about how it's something he's going to use as motivation to improve moving forward. Aiden O'Connell, another player, Max Crosby, you see guys just sort of frustrated by letting another one slip away. But I do think you still see a sense of belief in the coaching staff and their ability to, inspire these guys and get them ready to play. Obviously, that's not the only thing that matters. You do have to figure out how to finish these games and turn more of these losses into wins. But, whether it's right after the games or throughout the week, guys have been pretty consistent. I think it's a different tone than you felt last year. I think, around that trade deadline and after that Monday Night Football loss to the Lions that ended up, preceding, the coaching staff changes that were made last year. It hasn't reached that point. Obviously, they're in a worse position record-wise now than they were at this point last year. But I still think there's an element of, Antonio Pierce having that hold on the locker room. And, the fan base, their primary concern is wins. And so they want to see that coming, even if everybody in the locker room loves him. But yeah, I think that's something that's probably his best argument when you go ahead to looking ahead to this offseason. And are they going to give Antonio Pierce a second year as head coach? I think that's his greatest argument right now is the consistent level of effort that he's getting from the players.
You mentioned Aiden O'Connell having a great game. He could be poised for another big game against Tampa. We're looking for some consistency, though, considering, they have really struggled against the pass. Their defense has. But what position, big picture, is AOC in realistically over the next 5 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much the best game he's ever played, at least in the NFL. I mean, set a career high in passing yards, and he really, helped lead that comeback in the second half with the touchdown pass to Brock Bowers and then another one to Trey Tucker. And, I think he's a guy that a lot of people expected to be the starter coming into the season. He obviously had that training camp battle with Gardner Minshew, ended up losing out, and then, he was going to start earlier this season before he suffered that broken thumb. And so it's been a sort of a weird year for Aiden. He hasn't gotten the opportunities that probably he expected or many others expected. But in these last final games, these last 5 games, and including the Chiefs game, was his first start back from injury. It's more so about, I think, trying to send a message that he should be a part of a quarterback competition next year. Because being realistic, as you said, the Raiders are going to explore their options at quarterback this offseason, as they should. When you're coming off a 2-10 season, you have to examine every part of the roster, particularly the most important position in football. And so whether that's through free agency, a trade, the draft, like I'd be shocked if they came out of next offseason without adding another starting caliber quarterback to the mix. But that doesn't mean O'Connell, doesn't have a chance to compete and potentially enter next season as the starter. And so I think that's what these final 5 games are about between him and interim offensive coordinator Scott Turner is, can he replicate that effort that he had against the Chiefs? And I think if he's playing like that to end the season, you have to at least consider bringing him back and giving him a chance to compete next year.
I want to talk about a guy that's kind of intrigued me, Sincere McCormick. He's run the ball very well, kind of came out of nowhere. Where does he stand going forward? Because the running back situation has been bizarre. I mean, let's just be real. It was supposed to be Zamir White. It hasn't worked out. Alexander Madison gave him a little punch. He's not healthy. Where's Sincere going forward?
Yeah, I wrote a story about him today, actually, over at The Athletic, but it's been a kind of a winding journey for him. I mean, it's his rookie year here. Back a couple of years ago, he signed as an undrafted free agent, and he tore his ACL and after practice, catching punts, missed his entire rookie year. Then last year, he was on the practice squad the entire year. And so coming into this year, I mean, he was pretty much an afterthought. I mean, everybody expected Zamir White to be the starting running back coming off his performance at the end of last season. And then Alexander Madison complimented him, Amir Abdullah, even Dylan Labe, 7th round pick, was getting a lot of training camp hype. And you didn't really hear much about McCormick until you did. And I think, these last couple of weeks, he's been their most efficient runner pretty easily. The run game has been really bad this year. I mean, they're last in the league in rushing, but he's averaging well over 5 yards per carry. And he's really provided some juice in a limited sample size. And so I think the next step for him is getting more opportunity. He's a guy that he's been through a lot in life. I mean, he's from Long Beach. He had a period where he was growing up where he dealt with homelessness, bounced around a little bit. He lived in Las Vegas briefly as a kid before moving on to San Antonio and starting his football career there. And, so he's been used to adversity, and so kind of working your way up a depth chart is pretty small compared to some of the things that he's been through earlier in his life. And so I think that's why you see him, taking on this challenge the way that he has. And he's a similar guy, similar to AOC. I mean, these final 5 games of the season, can he show that he could potentially be the lead back for the Raiders, moving forward, or be in that running back rotation moving forward? I think he can. And so I think we'll see him have his highest carry total this week, assuming health, against the Tampa Bay Bucks. And we'll see what he's able to do with a little bit more volume.
The Raiders are definitely going to know who they have at the end of these 5 weeks, because everybody on the depth chart they have seen at some point throughout this season, including very young players. This was Tom Telesco's first draft as Raiders GM, and 4 of the 8 picks he made in 24 started last week against the Chiefs. And then you can also put Dylan Labe out there because he was returning kicks as well. Evaluate the 2024 draft class this far.
I mean, it's hard to ask for much more. I know that going into that draft, everybody wanted them to get a quarterback. I mean, you got Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and, even Bo Nix. I mean, all these guys have gone on to have a lot of success this year. And as we said earlier, that's the most important position in the game. But it doesn't mean it's a loss if you still come out with good players. And I mean, Brock Bowers, he's as good as it gets. I mean, he's on track to be a first-team All-Pro, in my opinion. I mean, he's arguably the best tight end in the league already as a rookie. He's putting up some unprecedented numbers. He's going to break multiple records by the end of the season. He's already a star player. And anytime you get one of those, as a rookie, the draft class is a win. But not only that, but, Jackson Powers Johnson in the second round. I mean, he's been a guy that started off, or didn't start the season, but eventually grew into a starter at left guard. Has shown the positional flexibility to move over to center. And he's played really well there the last few weeks and looks like he's going to be a guy moving forward. DJ Glaze starting at right tackle, another guy on the offensive line. And you talk about the game's most important positions, quarterback's up there, but so is offensive line. And they might have potentially found 2 starters that they can depend on moving forward. And as you mentioned, DeCamerion Richardson, I know has been, kind of unexpected. He's had to go out there due to injuries. Jacorian Bennett is on IR, and they've had a couple other injuries. Nate Hobbs at cornerback. And so he's been kind of unexpectedly thrust out there. And there's going to be growing pains. Any rookie cornerback, I mean, you make a mistake at that position, it shows up pretty quickly, right? And so, but I think they believe he has some long-term potential with his combination of height, speed, wingspan. He just needs experience to continue to improve and get better moving forward. And so it's hard to ask for much more when it comes to year 1 impact from this rookie class, and you got to be excited about that group moving forward, but also about, what Telesco could potentially do in the 2025 draft. Right now the Raiders, they're in the mix for a pretty high first-round pick. It's going to be fluid through the end of the season, but it's looking like they might end up with a top 5, top 10 pick and potentially add another difference maker similar to Brock Bowers. And so I think you have to be pretty confident and how they performed in that area in year one as this new regime and looking ahead to the future.
Not just the rookies, Tashan, but a lot of men have been asked to step up with all of these injuries. Who on the team would you see as a foundational piece for the future that was sort of discovered this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at it, I would probably look to the defensive side of the ball, and I think they've had a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and that's I think what is it, 5 or 6 starters out at this point. So they, like as you said, they've had to call upon a lot of guys that maybe they weren't anticipating, doing so. And I think on the back end, Isaiah Pulamau has been somebody that stepped up as safety with Marcus Epps going down with a torn ACL pretty early on in the season. He's a guy that I believe is going to be a restricted free agent going into this offseason, and so potentially have to sign him to a new deal in order to bring him back. But I think he's played pretty well and improving himself to be, potentially a rotational guy moving forward. And then his running mate, Trayvon Merrick, I know he's a name that we're familiar with, and he's not necessarily somebody that fans don't know about, but he is going into free agency, and I think he's taken another leap this season and really evolved his game. And so they might have, they're starting safety tandem moving forward in those two, and they're both going into free agency, and they're making a case for the franchise to bring him back. But I just think that defense in particular, Patrick Graham, it seems like he's dealing with a different starting defense almost every week. And I know the unit hasn't played the way that they wanted to this year, but they've still shown that they're able to step up in moments like they did against the Chiefs last week. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he's the best player in the league, and he was looking pretty pedestrian last week. And I know that they pulled out the win, but the defense, gave him every chance to win that game. And so I think Patrick Graham and what some of these younger guys have done on the defensive side of the ball, if they're able to have better, injury luck next season, get a guy like Christian Wilkins coming back after he had surgery this year, potentially Malcolm Kuntz, another guy that hasn't played this year. If you get those guys back and, these younger guys that are getting more experience now can continue to get better, potentially the defense can make a turnaround starting next year.
Look, when you're 2-10, Raider Nation, they're upset about it. They feel hopeless. That's understandable. But when you look around the NFL, it is easy to turn a franchise around if you make the right decisions in the offseason. Every year there's a team. 2 years ago it was the Houston Texans, went from worst to first. We can even look within the AFC West and see the Broncos and the Chargers and what they're doing after really down years last year. How impactful can 1 or 2 major offseason choices be for the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Texans last year, but this year, I mean, you look at the Washington Commanders and what they're doing. I don't think anybody really saw this coming as quickly as they did, having a first-year coach and GM and a rookie quarterback, and they're a playoff contender just like that. And it can change really quickly, and I think the Raiders are in a position because of the assets that they'll have this offseason. As I mentioned, it looks like they're going to have a high first-round pick. Obviously, organizationally, you don't want to be in that range, but if you are, it's very valuable to be able to, potentially draft a quarterback or draft another player at a position of need and land an immediate impact starter as a rookie and then the rest of the draft class. And then as it stands right now, we don't know what the salary cap is going to be in 2025, but it looks like the Raiders are projected to have well over $100 million in cap space according to Over the Cap. And every year there's a ton of good players that hit free agency, and they're going to be able to improve multiple spots on the roster. And if they are able to do that, land some big free agency signings, make some improvements in the draft class as well, you could make a quick turnaround. And we've seen it, like you mentioned, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Commanders this year. Like, it happens every single year. And there's no reason why you can't do it. Obviously, having assets isn't enough. You have to make the right decisions, but it is something that's feasible.
I'll tell you, getting a great quarterback to throw to Brock Bowers would be pretty nice. And Bowers continues to show out. You mentioned Jaden Daniels. I just mentioned the Broncos. We know Bo Nix. Do you think Brock Bowers has a shot at Rookie of the Year? And in your opinion, is he the Rookie of the Year if we weren't so biased towards quarterbacks?
Yeah, sadly, because it is so biased towards quarterbacks, I don't think he actually has a realistic shot at winning it. And I also think, team success, like you mentioned, both the Broncos and the Commanders are in the playoff hunt, and that typically is a tiebreaker. But I don't know how you can argue that Brock Bowers hasn't been the best rookie in the league this year. I mean, he's on pace to set some crazy records. We haven't really seen a rookie tight end produce in this way before. And again, as I said, and tight end is a loaded position. I mean, you have George Kittle, you have Travis Kelce, you have some of the best tight ends of all time still playing right now at a high level. And you could argue that Brock Bowers is already the best tight end in the league. And that's a statement. If you're the best player at your position, I feel like you should be the Rookie of the Year. But, as we said, it's a quarterback award at this point, or maybe running back even some years. But so it's kind of hard to see him winning it. But I think the bigger thing for Raiders fans is it look like they landed a superstar that's going to be a cornerstone for this franchise moving forward.
We're just going to play the recording of you saying that to all the voters that actually have a vote in this, because you make a great case. One last question. This will be the 4th game under Scott Turner. What are some of the biggest differences that you have seen? I know you can't change an entire offense just with an interim offensive coordinator, but they're clearly more productive. What are the differences?
Yeah, as you say, you're not going to completely scrap the playbook this deep into the season, but I think they've just been more on top of their P's and Q's. It's been more organized. You haven't seen as many missed assignments. It looks like a cleaner operation overall. And I know their point totals haven't been up there. You know, it's been similar to what they were before, but I think they just look better. It looks more efficient. And there's been really a huge uptick, I would say, with the offensive line, not just with Scott Turner taking over, but Joe Philbin also took over as interim offensive line coach. And with this unit that they've settled in on the last 4 weeks, Colton Miller, Jordan Meredith, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Dylan Parham, and then DJ Glaze, they've had the same group starting for, this is going to be the fifth week in a row. That's been a position group where they had a bunch of injuries and it was a lot of moving parts, but they've really settled into that group. And I think you're seeing the blocking improve both in pass protection and run blocking. That's what's helping, Aiden O'Connell have a big game last week. That's what's helping, Sensei McCormick have some success. And from a receiving standpoint, I mean, you see, Brock Bowers is drawing a lot of attention now, and that's opened up opportunities for guys like Jacoby Myers to really have big games the last couple of weeks. And Trey Tucker had a long touchdown last week. And so it just looks cleaner overall. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. And I think moving forward, potentially Scott Turner may be able to give himself a decent shot at maybe earning that full-time offensive coordinator role this offseason. Obviously, they have to go through a full hiring process and things of that nature before they do something like that. But I think if this offense continues to improve these last few weeks, you have to at least think about it.
Yeah, putting it on his resume for sure, the improvements. Finish the sentence. The Raiders will win on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if blank.
Oh, man. Aiden O'Connell has another big day. Brock Bowers scores multiple touchdowns, which he hasn't done yet in his young career. I think if he gets 2 touchdowns and Aiden O'Connell goes off, the Raiders are able to win a shootout against the Bucs. So that Bucs offense is serious. Baker Mayfield's balling out this year. But I think we can see a lot of points in this one, and maybe the Raiders can come out on top.
All right, I love it. Tashan Reed, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate you taking some time on a busy week.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, some see the phrase next man up as cliche, but Chaisson sees it as an opportunity. The Raiders defensive end joins the Silver and Black Show next.
Some days are long, some nights never end. I mark the fleeting seconds flight, I pray to the coming wind. And time like snow never stood around for me. I love every sky
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
In 300 feet, turn left.
With Cox's fiber-powered internet, you can do brilliant things.
Exit approaching.
Like upload your voice to Dad's GPS in no time flat.
And I miss you, Daddy. Happy birthday.
Get multi-gig download speeds powered by fiber. Upgrade your internet today with Cox, the nation's fastest internet provider. Limited availability in select areas.
It's game day, the day we've been waiting for. And this is more than just a game, it's a passion, a lifestyle. Here at the Raider Image, you're part of our team. Whether you're in the stands cheering from home, we've got your back. Feel the confidence. Own the game.
We
are the Raider Image. Your game, your gear. Exclusively at the Raider Image.
He stays on as a linebacker here on 3rd and 10. He's shadowing. Mahomes hit from behind, and down he goes. Back at the 15-yard line, it is K'Lavon Chaisson. Field with play action. He's got a man. And K'Lavon Chaisson got back there for the sack. Oh, that was huge.
Glad to be joined by Raiders defensive end K'Lavon Chaisson, and you just signed with the Raiders on September 10th, so you're pretty new to the franchise, but you've really taken advantage of the opportunity here. What is it about the situation here in Las Vegas with this team that's allowed you to really begin to fulfill the potential that so many scouts and people believed in when you're a first-round draft pick?
I believe it definitely helps being in a new environment and being able to create your own narrative going out there. But I feel like the biggest thing is going into and just making the best of your opportunities when you get a chance to step on the field and represent your last name, the logo on the front of your jersey and on the side of your helmet. It's a true honor to be a part of that, and I make sure I just never forget that it's truly a blessing to be a part of the NFL.
Because you've had quite a journey, haven't you? Tell me a little bit about it. Your first-round draft pick in 2020. You go to Jacksonville. You spend 4 years. And then this summer, you don't have a team. And then the Raiders come calling. So what has kind of led you through this journey? And I imagine there's been some adversity along the way.
No, most definitely. But perseverance is the main thing that I try to go by and live by every day. The gratefulness, once again, being allowed to being able to play in this league, obviously being able to have your talents recognized and to display them on Sunday afternoons. It's truly a blessing. So it's definitely something that you have to keep your head down and continue working regardless of what the results may be, and truly believe in the plan. And so just coming into this year and being able to be accepted by the Raiders and the organization and the teammate, I was excited for the opportunity, and I knew to make the best of them for sure.
Well, now you're here and you're playing opposite Max Crosby. That's quite an opportunity. What have you learned or taken away from him, being in the same meeting rooms, being around him?
Oh, man, there's so many nuggets I get from Max, man. It's an everyday focus. I think at a certain point, I feel like he maybe get annoyed just with the questions that many of us come to him and ask kind of just how he see the game and kind of break it down. But in my mind, man, I try to do the best to help Max out and just everybody else on the D-line. Max draws a lot of attention, so the more I thrive and do well in my side of the defense. I think we all eat on a great pace.
Give me a nugget. You said so many nuggets. Give me just one thing that you were like, oh,
man, I don't want to.
Okay.
I wish I could, but I feel like that's our advantage
Giving away
right
the
now.
game?
Yeah,
Giving away the game
that,
plan?
so
Okay, we're not going to give away the game plan, that's for sure. But did you tell Max, did you say, hey, that sack, that was mine, they should have given it to me?
He know I definitely mentioned to him for sure. But I was happy for him, of course, like it stayed in the room. But we definitely thought about it. Even we had one at the end of the second half that we was all kind of fighting over, me, Spill, Max, Adam, and it was like, nah, that's me. So it's good when you can have those type of competitions and those fights for the quarterback.
You did have a coming out party, though, against the Chiefs. You have 6 pressures, 1.5 sacks, should have been 2.5 for the record. What was your mindset going into that game, especially knowing you're facing a very mobile, efficient quarterback in Patrick Mahomes?
Nah, I knew, once again, that Max draws a lot of attention. And so going into the game, that my side of the ball we're going to have to dominate. We have to win our one-on-one matchup. And that's just the name of the game in the NFL. Truly, the defensive staff, the D-line room, everybody truly believes in me winning my one-on-one matchup. So that's the goal out there. Go out there and just win one-on-one as many times as possible.
How does Patrick Graham put you in the best situation to kind of show your talents?
Just go out there and play ball. Try not to add too much to the play. The main thing is get the guy with the ball, get the quarterback, and that makes things a lot less stressful for the defense and on the back end. So the more we get to put in that position and we get to pin our ears back and roll, it's a good thing for the defense.
Yeah, simple. See ball, get ball, right?
See ball, get ball, yeah.
Now you face Baker Mayfield. He's a scrappy quarterback. What do you see on film that makes him so dangerous at times?
Ball out quick. Ball out. Being able to make decisions really fast and kind of knowing pre-snap where he wants to go with the ball. That's an exceptional tool that a quarterback can have. So being able to fight obviously against the offensive line, but as well as the throwing time and the ball out, the shot clock. So he does a great job with that as well. I think just overall the offense has a great ability. Believe top 10 offense going into the week. So it's a challenge overall, but I think we're up for it for sure.
Your defense has gone from towards the bottom of the league in run defense to now top 11 just over the last 3 weeks with how you've been able to stop the run. How much, though, are you going to have to circle the young kid, Bucky Irving, out there?
Oh, man, they're truly, him and the other back are truly great backs
Rashad.
for sure. So we can never take that up from them. But just honing in and playing sound defense, I think PG does a great job in dialing up and putting us in great positions to make the plays. So we've worked these details since the beginning of the year going on in. We don't really change too much. It's all about just trusting the plan and doing your 111.
I know you don't study your own numbers as a defense, not like you get up there and put it on the whiteboard, but you guys held the Chiefs to 19 points. You're top 15 against the run, pass, and total yards allowed. People don't talk about that. Is this defense a bit underrated?
Man, I let the outsiders do that. I ain't kind of judge, man. I want the wins. So that's the big thing in our goal for sure.
What are the next 5 games? What do they look like for K'Lavon Chaisson?
One game at a time. We will focus on the Bucs, so we go out there and we thrive, and we continue to finish the pace that we was on last week, and good things happen.
Well, I'll tell you, congrats on what you've been doing and the recent success, and hopefully you found a home here in Vegas.
Most definitely. Thank you so much.
Coming up, why did Aidan O'Connell have such a good game against the Chiefs after struggling earlier in the year? Well, we have a theory. It's coming up in One Last Thing on the Silver and Black Show.
Taste is not an option. Taste is everything. 1800, the world's most awarded tequila.
Some days are long, some nights never end. I'm hard with fleeting seconds flight. I pray to the coming wind. And time like snow never stood around for me. I love every sky
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
Celebrate 65 seasons of Raiders football. Be a part of our legacy with a special edition brick featuring the exclusive 65th anniversary logo. Get your brick installed at Allegiant Stadium along with a replica for your home or office. Order now and support the Raiders Foundation, benefiting military and veterans, wellness initiatives, and youth development. Secure your place in Raiders history today at RaidersFoundationBricks.com. The Silver and Black Show has been brought to you by Cox, proud partner of the Las Vegas Raiders, Ticketmaster, the official ticket marketplace of the Las Vegas Raiders and the NFL, and by Allegiant, the official airline of the Raiders. Low fares, non-stop flights, only at Allegiant.com. Time now for one last thing. Aidan O'Connell is young. We know he's capable of being productive in the NFL as a starter because we've seen glimpses, but can he do it consistently? Coach Pierce liked what he saw, because he said he did, against the Chiefs, but the next 5 games will certainly be an audition.
Thought he competed. I thought for what we knew we was getting with Spags in that defense, that he stood in the pocket, made some tough throws, took some hits, took the shots down the field like we wanted. We had some opportunities to take shots down the field. He threw them. And I thought our skill guys did a hell of a job competing and making some really big plays for us.
Did you hear that? Took shots down the field. That's exactly where AOC shines. Under Scott Turner, he's been asked to do just that. Check this out. He was 5 of 6 for 188 yards on deep balls last weekend. Both touchdowns he threw were 20 yards or more. Remember, this is the guy who lost the quarterback battle in training camp to Gardner Minshew. Yet under Turner, he outduels Patrick Mahomes.
He's, been clear with the communication. It's been great to have him in meetings and kind of just going through, what he thinks. And obviously, we haven't changed our entire offense, but there's been some wrinkles that he's added from his past. And so it's just been fun to communicate with him to kind of pick his brain about what he thinks.
Since Turner became offensive coordinator in Week 11, the Raiders have a top 5 passing offense, perhaps because they take shots down the field. Or could it also be that Brock Bowers is the yak king? Right now, he's second in the NFL in yards after catch amongst receivers, behind only Jamar Chase. Targeting him makes sense, and it's working.
But the one thing about Brock, just throw it in the area around him. Just throw it. I mean, these one-hand catches. I mean, his catch radius and his ability to make tough catches in traffic is really impressive. And just a hard, gritty player, man. And again, he's running away from corners. He's a matchup problem. Everybody sees that.
While we're speaking of matchups, Tampa has given up the 3rd most receiving yards against tight ends this year. So taking shots downfield, especially to Bowers, will be key to getting the Raiders back in the win column. That'll do it for us. It's Raiders Buccaneers 10 a.m. kickoff from Tampa. We'll see you right here after the game for Raiders Game Day. Have a great weekend, everyone.